Now, we all know Wicked, the book, and that amazing musical have revived interest in Oz, L. Frank Baum's world, from over a century ago.
Yeah, but why are we still so captivated by Oz after all this time? I'm curious.
Me too. Well, one reason is that Baum's Land of Oz is so open to interpretation.
It really is like this vast playground for the imagination.
Yeah.
So many different regions and such unique characters.
Exactly. It gives every adaptation space to add new layers of meaning, and Wicked really takes that and runs with it. We see it in everything from Baum's early books to the 1939 movie.
And then all the way to Maguire's Wicked and that smash hit Broadway musical.
Yeah, every single one of them builds on Oz in its own unique way. But what's striking to me is how both Baum and Maguire, even though they wrote decades apart, use fantasy to dig into real-world problems.
And they do it in such an engaging way, you don't even realize you're being challenged.
Right. It's like they sneak in these thought-provoking themes without hitting you over the head with them.
Totally. Fantasy lets them tackle those complex issues, things like power, identity, and morality, in a way that's accessible to everyone.
It's like they're holding up a mirror to society, but instead of showing us a straightforward reflection, they're using Oz to make us think about those issues differently.
I love that analogy.
Mm.
And that's a big part of why these stories resonate with people across generations, right?
Yeah.
They tap into those core human experiences we can all relate to, no matter when we first encounter the story.
Absolutely. But let's zero in on Wicked for a minute. What grabs me is how Maguire flips the script on the Wicked Witch of the West. You know, in that classic film, she's basically this one-dimensional villain.
All green skin and cackling.
Yeah, exactly. But Maguire gives her, Elphaba, a voice, a background, a whole new dimension.
It's so brilliant. He forces us to question how we see good versus evil, to see things from an angle we'd never considered before.
Right. It's like he's saying, hey, maybe there's more to the story than you think.
Exactly. And he cultivates empathy for a character who's always been cast as the villain simply by letting us see the world through her eyes.
Makes you realize there's always two sides to every story, and maybe even more than that.
Definitely. And once you understand her motivations, her struggles, suddenly the Wicked Witch of the West becomes this complex, even sympathetic character.
And man, talk about unexpected heroes. Elphaba's popularity is through the roof. I mean, there's a reason everyone's going crazy for that upcoming Wicked film adaptation.
I know, right? Elphaba has become this symbol of empowerment, standing up against oppression. Her story speaks to anyone who feels marginalized, anyone fighting for justice and equality.
Which, let's face it, is incredibly relevant today.
Oh, absolutely. It's as if Maguire took what Baum started and built upon it, creating a story that speaks directly to a new generation facing a whole new set of challenges.
So you have this world, this Oz that Baum created, that's ripe for reinterpretation. Then Maguire comes along and transforms it. He takes a classic children's story and crafts this complex exploration of adult themes. It's amazing how he doesn't just retell it, he reshapes it completely.
It really is. And one of the most clever things he does is how he changes how magic is portrayed. In Baum's books, it's often used for whimsical purposes, but in Wicked, magic represents Elphaba's power and her struggle against a system that wants to control and limit her.
Wow, so it's not just about sparkles and spells, it becomes this metaphor for something much deeper.
Exactly. And this shift, from whimsical to powerful, reflects how storytelling itself has evolved, adapting to contemporary concerns and reflecting the changing world around us.
You know, it makes you wonder if Oz itself is like this living, breathing thing, changing and growing with every retelling. It's like each adaptation adds another layer to this already fascinating world.
That's a really cool thought. And that's what makes both The Wizard of Oz and Wicked so enduring. They tap into those universal human experiences we all share. Like, think about Dorothy's journey.
Such a classic coming-of-age story. The search for belonging, finding yourself.
Exactly. It's timeless, relatable to anyone who's ever felt lost or unsure, even if they've never even thought about Oz.
Then you've got Elphaba in Wicked, who embodies this fierce resistance against injustice. Her story taps into that innate desire to fight for what's right, to challenge those in power, even when the odds are stacked against you.
And that makes her character so enduring. She represents challenging the status quo, standing up for your beliefs, even when it's tough. It's like she's saying, forget the labels society throws at you, you define yourself.
So inspiring. Even though she's branded wicked, Elphaba becomes this unexpected hero for anyone who feels voiceless. She gives them hope that they can fight back, make a real difference.
And it makes you wonder if that label, wicked, is more about defying expectations and refusing to conform than it is about being truly evil.
That's a powerful point. It's almost like in this story, wicked takes on a whole new meaning. like a badge of honor, a symbol of rebellion against forces trying to define you.
And that gets to the heart of how complicated morality is, how our ideas of good and evil are shaped by societal pressures, by those in power controlling the narrative.
It really challenges you to think about who gets to decide what's good and what's evil, and whose voices get silenced along the way.
Absolutely. And that's where Wicked really shines. It encourages us to think critically, to question labels, to look beyond the surface and recognize the nuances within each person.
There's always more to the story than meets the eye. Judging someone based on preconceptions can lead to huge misunderstandings. It's about looking deeper, understanding the forces that shape people's lives, the choices they make, and the consequences they face.
Absolutely. And that's a message that's so important, especially now when things feel so polarized and divided. Wicked reminds us how vital empathy is, seeking understanding instead of perpetuating conflict. It's a call for compassion, a reminder that we all have our own stories.
And it does so through a story that's both entertaining and thought-provoking, which is a testament to the power of art to challenge our assumptions and spark meaningful conversations.
It really is. This deep dive has just scratched the surface of what these stories offer. There's so much depth to explore, so many layers to uncover.
But even just scratching the surface, we've discovered so much about the power of these stories to connect with us on a deep, emotional level.
I agree. We started talking about the enduring appeal of Oz, and we've realized it's not just about the magical setting or the fantastical creatures. It's so much more than that.
It really is. It's about the human heart of these stories, the universal themes of love, loss, betrayal, redemption, the things that make us human, the things we all struggle with.
And the courage to be different, to stand up for what you believe in, even when everyone tells you you're wrong. It's about finding your voice and using it to make a difference, and that message will always be relevant. It's like Oz, and especially Wicked, give us permission to embrace our own complexities, to question the narratives we've been given.
I love that. It's about recognizing we all have the potential for both good and evil within us, and it's our choices that truly define who we are.
Yeah, it really makes you rethink those easy labels we put on people and things.
It does. Maguire makes us think about how those labels can be used to control people.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this whole deep dive so fascinating. We're not just looking back at this story we love, we're seeing it with fresh eyes.
Yeah, with a whole new understanding. And speaking of understanding, it's really interesting how both Baum and Maguire used Oz to reflect the worries of their times.
Yeah, it's a great example of how fantasy can be this powerful tool for social commentary. Baum was writing in the early 1900s.
A time of huge change.
Exactly. Rapid industrialization, social upheaval, all those anxieties found their way into his stories. It's like a subtle critique of what was happening around him.
So even though it's about, witches and wizards and flying monkeys, it's also a reflection of the real world.
Oh, absolutely. And then fast forward to the late 20th century, you've got Maguire dealing with a whole other set of anxieties.
Like what?
Social justice, the environment, questioning those traditional power structures. It's all there in Wicked.
And you see that reflected in Elphaba's journey.
Totally.
Sure.
Her rebellion against the wizard, her fight for those who are marginalized. She's like the embodiment of that time, pushing back against the establishment.
It's like Maguire took what Baum started and built on it, created a story that speaks to a whole new generation with new challenges.
Exactly. And he gives a voice to those anxieties through Elphaba, turns her into this symbol of resistance.
Yeah.
But it's not just about the big picture stuff, is it?
No, not at all. They both weave in those universal themes that resonate no matter when you read them.
Right, like Dorothy's journey in The Wizard of Oz. Such a classic coming-of-age story. The search for where you belong and who you are.
Those themes are timeless. They speak to anyone who's ever felt lost or uncertain.
Even if they've never heard of Oz.
Exactly. And then in Wicked, you have Elphaba, who embodies this fierce spirit of resistance against injustice. It's that desire we all have to fight for what's right, to challenge those in power.
Even when it feels impossible.
Yeah, and that's what makes her so enduring. She shows the power of challenging the status quo and fighting for what you believe in.
Even when it's hard. It's like she's saying, you don't have to accept the labels people give you. You define yourself.
It's inspiring, isn't it? Even though she's labeled wicked, she becomes this unlikely hero for people who feel like they don't have a voice.
Right. She gives them hope that they can fight back, that they can change things. It really makes you wonder if that label wicked is more about defying expectations.
About not conforming.
Exactly. More than it is about actually being evil.
That's such a good point. The word wicked takes on a whole new meaning in this story.
It does. It's like a badge of honor.
Yeah.
A symbol of rebellion against anyone who tries to put you in a box.
And it speaks to how complex morality really is. Our ideas of good and evil are so influenced by what society tells us, by those in power who control the narrative.
It really does. It makes you think about who gets to decide what's good and what's bad, and whose voices are being ignored in the process.
Absolutely, and that's where Wicked really shines. It encourages us to think for ourselves, to question those labels,
To see beyond the surface and understand each person as an individual.
and that there's always more to the story than what we see at first glance. Judging someone based on what we think we know can lead to some really big misunderstandings.
It can. It's about taking the time to look deeper, to understand what shapes people's lives, the choices they make, and what happens because of those choices.
It's like that saying, everyone is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Wicked encourages us to be more compassionate, to see things from other perspectives.
Yeah, before we judge. And that message is so important, especially now when it seems like everyone is so divided.
It really is. Wicked reminds us how important it is to have empathy, to try to understand each other instead of creating more conflict.
It is. It's like a call for compassion, a reminder that we all have a story to tell.
And it does all that through a story that's both entertaining and makes you think. It shows how powerful art can be in challenging our assumptions and starting those important conversations.
This deep dive has only scratched the surface of what these stories have to offer.
I know, right? There's so much to explore.
But even just scratching the surface, we've learned so much about how these stories can connect with us on such a deep level.
It's funny, we started by talking about how much people love Oz, and now we realize it's not just about the magic and the fantastical creatures. It's so much deeper than that.
It's about the human heart of these stories, the universal themes of love, loss, betrayal, redemption.
All the things that make us human, the things we all struggle with.
Exactly. And the courage to be different, to stand up for what you believe in, even when everyone tells you you're wrong.
It's about finding your voice and using it to change things.
And that's a message that will always be important no matter how much time passes.
And it's not just about finding that strength within yourself, it's about using it to make a real difference in the world. And I think that's one of the most compelling things about Elphaba.
Right. She doesn't just sit back and accept the injustices she sees. She actually fights back.
Exactly. She uses her power, all of it, to challenge how things are and fight for something better.
And by doing that, she inspires others to do the same. You see, with Glinda, Elphaba inspires her to become a more compassionate leader, someone who actually cares about justice.
And that's why her story still resonates with people today. It's like Wicked has given us a new way to see ourselves and where we fit in.
It really has. It's shown us that even those labeled as different or wicked can change the world.
And it's given us permission to question everything, to challenge the norms, to embrace the fact that things aren't always black and white.
Exactly. And that's made Oz, especially Wicked, even more relevant, more meaningful for a whole new generation.
Yeah.
We started this deep dive talking about how Wicked has brought Oz back into the spotlight.
But it's done so much more than that. It's like it's given us a whole new way of looking at the world, one that lets us see those complexities we might have missed before.
That's a great way to put it. It's a reminder that things are never as simple as they seem. There's always more to the story. And it's a call to action, an invitation to be more thoughtful, more compassionate.
So as we wrap up our journey to Oz, I want to leave you with a thought. Think about everything we've discussed today, about Oz, about how Wicked changes everything, those blurry lines between good and evil, and the courage to be yourself. What really stands out to you? What will you take away from this?
For me, it's the idea that stories can change the world. They can make us question what we believe, inspire us to act, and connect us to something bigger than ourselves. And Wicked is a perfect example of that. It's touched so many lives, and it keeps sparking important conversations about justice, equality, and having the power to make your own choices.
I love that. And to everyone listening, we encourage you to keep exploring Oz. Dive into Baum's original books, experience the magic of the 1939 film, immerse yourself in Maguire's Wicked, and of course, get ready for the upcoming film adaptation. There's so much to discover, and who knows, you might even find a piece of yourself along the way. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Wicked.
It's been a pleasure.